Hello and welcome everybody to the weird world of knowing. I'm Rachel Earing from Live for Energy, and I have a really beautiful guest with me today, Vasileios Basios. How are you?
Hi, I don't feel beautiful, but thank you for the compliment.
Well, we've just been talking before we came on air. You really are the most beautiful soul in
Yeah,
the.
thank you. Thank
So I'll read out your bio so that I do you some justice. During his formative years, he worked with a team at the Solvay Institutes of Physical and Chemistry in Brussels. He's interested in the ideas in science and their role in the transformation of science beyond the prevailing mechanistic worldview. He believes that never before has the need for a qualitative change in science been so apparent and pressing, and that complexity studies have had such a radical change, not just possible, but imperative. And he's inspired by the prospect of introducing self-reflection into the practice of science and the understanding of science. You're also a speaker and member of the board of directors for the Scientific and Medical Network, an advisor of the Galileo Commission, which we're going to talk about now. So the Galileo Commission, Vasileios, can you just explain what that is, please?
Sure, but before I think that thank you for the praise. But what I am grateful for my life is that I have been rubbing shoulders, so to speak, and elbows with great minds and great spirit in science and in the philosophical arena. So yes, I have been tutored by great tutors, and I hope I am, I'm getting at some of it. The Galileo Commission is trying to expand the scope of science and try to integrate things that you just mentioned,
Mm.
which are not part and in the radar of modern science, except from very brilliant minds that they have been kind of seeing that all along. Uh, like Penrose, who is the leading guy on stuff and Nobel Prize winner and an honorary member of the Scientific and Medical Network. So these are really great guys and tutors for us to expand the scope of science, because for the moment, since 1600, science has been disregarding the inside of things, the subjective experience.
Mm.
The program of science, at least the mainstream program of science, because there were always rebels and always heretics and always people who were bringing in the other stuff. The main dogma of science is that we can reduce all subjective experience and all primary to primary qualities, to objective stuff that we can measure.
Mm.
That's what Galileo did in order to save himself from the fire, from the stake, and not have the fate of Bruno. And so said, okay, don't talk about philosophy. Let's talk about what we can measure. And many people thought that that will bring a new kind of understanding for humanity at large, and we will get rid of dogma of religious dogma and of superstition.
Mm-hmm.
Now, as it turned out, the the the, the fighters of the beast became very close to the beast, and now another dogma has been established that there's nothing else but a bunch of flesh that we moves around, passes, and finished. So it's shut up, work, and die, which is not a very pleasant uh,
Yeah.
or liberating image from the highest echelon of academia. And that from science and physical science, has kind of pulled out and have been invading all the other stuff. By the way, as we're speaking, Galileo Commission is launching a renaissance appeal for the humanities, that the humanities also have to reconsider what is to be human, what is to be the dignity of a human being, what is all about. Are we just machines that can be replaced by another machine in a bigger machine of economy or whatever? Or are we something precious and wonderful and unique that we should cherish and respect and stay with all instead of every one of us, like the namaste thing. Anyway, science has been moving with from dogma, which is Another word for that is doxa, a Greek word, sorry, but then doxa is also part of the paradox. Paradox is what is not in what we believe. So things that are paradoxical cannot be resolved with certain logic that we have been trained in. So science trains itself to a logic, gets trapped to this logic, and then suddenly, oops, paradoxes are coming. Paradoxes are the generating force of the new scientific revolution. So this is what they say, that if you think out of the box. So we have many revolutions in science. The three big ones is relativity, quantum mechanics, and complexity. Something that not many historians of science have already acknowledged, because it was a very quiet revolution. Quantum mechanics, we have all the paradoxes that we know, the Schrödinger cat and things moving in faster than the speed of light, seemingly, or correlations appearing with great speed that cannot be understood, and all kinds of paradoxical stuff. In relativity also, it contradicted common sense. Even the name is paradoxical, because usually we think that everything is relative, but it's the opposite. Relativity states that the laws of physics are everywhere the same. Now, how far we can go with that, we can discuss later. The motor behind the scientific enterprise is utility, of course, to make things, usually bombs and weapons, because this is how we appreciate each other in this planet. So that atomic bombs, machine guns, lasers, these are things that make science move on. Some also medical applications and bettering of life, which is tremendous. I mean, we should not make fun of that, but along with the guns and there are the roses also of medical research that save many people. And but also, it's not only profit and utility. There is also this inherent motion, the logic that unfolds from each discipline, which brings us to the frontier of the discipline, and then we have to move on to meet the paradoxes and what is outside of the discipline. So we have one more, let's say, one moment that we kind of concentrate and understand everything and try to bring in information, to organize it, categorize it. And then we have another moment of daring exploration, to go out and reach something that is not part of our bucket of eggs, and go and collect other things. So in a sense, we're not that far away from the animal that explores and exploits its environment. Maybe it's not a physical environment, but a noetic environment and intellectual environment. And we go out reaching for new ideas, bring them in. Some of them work, some of them don't work. So Galileo Commission tries to expand and enlarge the horizons of modern science by including the greatest paradox of all, consciousness. And what on earth is consciousness? Well, every conscious being has his own answer to that.
Yeah.
So there are as many
questions there as there is with the quantum physics, I'm sure.
As many definitions of consciousness as consciousness being.
And I think I'm finding that actually with the guests that I'm bringing on, and I'm asking them to describe their weird world of knowing, and that knowing of how do you actually know that something is right or wrong. And that's really the biggest question that you can ask a scientist, really, because you have to do, research after research after research to prove that you are right or you are wrong in a certain area. So the consciousness of knowing our own experience really can only be gained, I believe, from our own personal experience, because otherwise we're just second guessing what everyone else is experiencing.
Yes, you hit the nail on the head. Exactly right. Because if something does not include our own self-reflection, what would be of the use of the beauty of knowing? Yeah, maybe the beauty of knowing is also, but it's also part of our own self-reflection, because you recognize a beautiful fact, for example. that I don't know, satellite Europe is full of ice or whatever. Well, okay, that's something that makes you feel beautiful. From utility point of view, it might be useful in hundreds of years, but as you say, if it doesn't say something for our own self-reflection about who we are, what the big questions.
They are huge questions.
Yes, that they have as many answers as human beings, that they're reflecting on that ever since. So it's like consciousness. They have the same answers, billions of them. Each one has his own.
Absolutely. So you and the Galileo Commission are encouraging academics, researchers to delve more into this side, the conscious side of research. And how is that going?
Oh, it's going brilliantly, because it started 3 years ago, almost 3 years and a half ago, end of 2018, and the idea was that we were 80 people at that moment, and we said, okay, we can make a report. There was one guy, Wallace, who made the report, and we tried to make it public and draw people and discuss the report and why science is not looking at things that are so important for everybody, but not for academic established science. Things like near-death experiences, the role of the brain. Is our consciousness part of the brain, or is our brain part of the consciousness? And all kinds of questions that they cannot have been answered even in standard materialistic, strictly reductionistic science.
May I ask, Vasileios, how you are able to quantify consciousness with near-death experiences?
Wait, one second.
Oh, sorry, you're not
because I didn't tell you how many are in the Galileo Commission now.
Sorry.
Yeah. So it's about 1,000.
Wow.
Wow. All academic scientists, people who are working in academia and moving. I mean, I don't count in the friends. Well, that's counting the academics, the professionals, not the friends and the supporters and all that. That's much more. And so it's going well. And yeah, if I may have a diversion, there are some friends in the Galileo Commission that they and around that we feel that we are like the gay movement in the 50s or the 60s, like going out of the closet, telling us, look, we are not weird. This is it is this part of the human being that you should take into account and not put it into the closet. So it's kind of getting out of the closet, being a scientist. The wonderful Fred Mercury, remember? I want to break free.
Absolutely, I want to break free.
So imagine a scientist that in the weekdays it's strictly mechanical, pursuing his science and doing his work and not asking any other questions. And then in the weekends he can go to the church, he can go to meditate, he will wonder about the
How beautiful would that be? I've got this image in my head now, Vasileios, of all these white-coated scientists literally ripping their and I want to break free and rushing down into this most beautiful oasis of consciousness. To make that movie, I like that.
That's the image, yeah. So it's kind of fun, but kind of very, very serious.
Very serious.
There are many people who are kind of have to deny their own a part of their own self in order to function correctly, like the case.
And that is really, really quite sad, isn't it? Because whenever we have to suppress part of ourselves, however big or small that may be, that's really where depression, because we're literally pushing that down and we get depressed. And it really does bring us down emotionally. And we know that, from emotionally, if we're not at our optimum game and going from a real heart-centered place of moving forward, it really can stop us functioning to our optimum ability.
In another part of the Galileo Commission, there's a book which is going to be edited soon by David Dorimer and Marjorie. And they are putting together experiences of how scientists made the flip, as you say, that there's a moment that say, hey, there's something else in life worth understanding and worth learning, and I have the tools. because I have been trained myself for all my years to pose and answer questions. Why not pose and answer questions about something which is very really interesting for my own consciousness? Animals, are we animals? Animals, are they humans? Things like that. Where are we going after death? Is the dreaming states, all kinds of stuff.
So how did you make the flip?
Yes, the same, almost the same way that many other people made the flip, and it is being recorded in this book that they are going to put out. It is a moment of following a straight line, which becomes a straight jacket, and you suppress, and then you go flip. and there's a moment of enlightenment and a moment of liberation, saying that, now I understand what's happening to me. Now I realize what's going on. That doesn't mean that you quit your job and you go out in the fields dancing with flowers on your head.
Oh, you see, that's the sort of thing I would do. No, you see, that's exactly what I did. When I had my experience, it really was. I just couldn't physically stay in that work environment any longer. And I got up at lunchtime, I got my bag and I walked out and I never went back. And it was as simple as that for me. I mean, it wasn't until the day after that everything kicked in and I suddenly thought, wow, I have 3 kids here and I've just walked out of work and I know there's no way I can go back into that building. And the relief, the total and utter relief that I felt of knowing I didn't have to, made me know I'd made the right decision, even though I had no idea how I was going to move forward yet. It was just completely the right decision. I couldn't function anymore in that claustrophobia of suppression. But it doesn't always have to be that way, as you say,
Yeah, and it can be, maybe scientists are not as daring as people as you are, because they're much
more sensitive.
general. I don't want to be racist, but general, I mean, 90%, whatever. But there's a guy that I admire a lot, and he has done a wonderful work on the consciousness part, understanding theoretical models of mathematical models of consciousness. Federico Chip had everything. He is the inventor of the microchip. He has everything. I mean, he's still a rich and beautiful human being. So he is the inventor of the microchip. He had companies in his name. He was well respected in everywhere. He had a PhD in physics. He was talking and he was moving around the world. And he said at the moment, but there was something missing. And then he describes in his book, Silicon, how he just, and his wife and his children and his family, everything was fantastic and perfect. His house, lots of money, but something was missing, because there was this inner thing, this yearning of who I am, what I'm doing, and struck him while he was just having a cup of water, a glass of water in the middle of the night, and then he got illuminated, and he said, nobody can explain. All the science and all the physicists in the world cannot tell me why I felt for such a long time this bliss and love and connection with everything. And I think connection is what is missing to understand how we are all interconnected, and also how this interconnection makes transcendence possible.
Let's talk about that, because that's what we were talking about before we came on, and that to me,
that's complex system.
Oh, right. Okay. So that's the complex system. Okay. So I was asking Vasileios to explain to me about complex system. Now it's all coming out. So you're talking about transitions of life and sort of moving on, and that energy of what does that energy feel like? Because we know that everything is energy. I know that much about physics. And what actually happens as we leave our body? Do we leave our body? What happens to that energy essence when life physically in our body ends? Because I know that that's something you've been investigating.
Well, that's a project that has been started recently, and we have not yet completed the whole analysis of that. But there's this idea of the random event generators that they are moving around define all laws of physics and showing up correlations. These are the paradoxes that we're talking about. This is, it's not part, it cannot be, the question cannot even be posed in the standard physics setting, although they are daring people again. I mean, the big names, Hameroff, Penrose, Federico Faggin, that they are challenging that. Stuart Kaufman, many other, who are all part of the Galileo Commission. But there are also other people who are trying to understand these ever-lasting and ever-present correlations that they burst in special moments, or where nothing else other than a state of consciousness is changing. There is Roger Nelson, a great scientist, and that has been working with Breda Dune and Robert Jahn, the pioneers of this research, and at Princeton, of the Princeton Engineering Anomalies, Princeton Engineering Anomalies, which now it's ICRL. Jeff Dune is the chairman, and there's a huge heritage that has been transferred to Broughton Hall estate. So these experiments show that whenever there's a state of consciousness, even remotely, these little fluctuations of little nothings, because they're just diodes. It's a very simple thing. It's nothing elaborate, nothing fully complicated. Just a diode, which is the simplest electrical thing that you can imagine. That can this other than a resistance diode, these are capacitors diode, and they allow the current to go this way. They cannot allow the current to go this way. So if you make them not conducting, the current that is escaping is due to a quantum tunneling effect, which is nothing, just a fluctuation, as if looking at a blank screen on the TV, just random stuff. And then suddenly these fluctuations, they get organized. Now, fluctuations in general can get organized randomly. That's but the thing is that when they are organized randomly with respect to another thing that is organized, then that's suspicious.
Give us an example of that.
Let's see, if I have a die and I play with my die and I throw it 5 times, and 5 times get 6. That's fine. I mean, it can happen. It's very improbable, but it's not impossible, right? But if I throw the dice and I get 5 times 6 every time you enter the room, and not at all when you are not entering the room, that's a correlation with the 2 rare events that make it even rarer. I remember in meteorology, long time ago, in the 90s, when I was working in meteorology, I mean, I was serving my military thing as a meteorology. There was a meteorologist, and he wrote something that struck me. He said, that was a debate about climate change. Then he said, rare events because of climate change are going to be, are rare in this setting of climate, but their frequent recurrence makes them even more rare. Which makes sense. Which makes sense from statistical point of view. It sounds paradoxical. It makes sense. So again, if you have a rare event that's supposed to happen one every 100 years, and now it happens every year, something has changed. And that's how we detect climate change. We say, okay, these are rare events, but the rare events are happening all the time. So the rarity and their frequency has changed. So they are something that has to be, it's a species, something behind them, a mechanism. The Earth is not responding well, the sunspots, I don't know what, but there is something.
And that then leads on to the next thing to investigate, doesn't it, as to what those...
Yes. And of course, if you are getting paid by oil companies, you can never think that oil destroys the planet. That's impossible, right? Not oil. I mean, who died from oil and radioactive or nuclear energy? Nobody.
Why don't we see those statistics?
Well, we see it. I mean, now it's obvious. Everybody, even the big oil companies, understand that we're destroying ourselves, and they try to move it. And even the pioneers, the people who make plastic, the people who make oil, they try to redeem themselves. But in the 90s, that was out of the question. There was, I mean, you could never say that. It was like, no, we don't say these things.
No. And like you say, everything is now coming out of the closet in more ways than one. Everything that you're putting together is absolutely music to someone like myself, who, when we work with the body's energy, when we work with our own energy, and we make that connection with another person to help alleviate the mental distress or the physical pain that's there, that connection we feel.
That's a magic word.
Experience. The connection really is extremely important to anything of value, to shift it to that next level of vibration. Disgusting parts of ourselves that, we've tried to hide. But when you express all of that chemical reaction, I suppose, that comes out, creates something new.
And that's another great thing, that we have to liberate our female mind, so to speak. It's nothing sexual. I mean, it's not that I'm thinking about our female psychology, the anima. So it has nothing to do with what sex we identify, but it has to do with a mode of doing things. It's better to be called in for help here, like the anima and the animus, that both males and females have a part. And I have a story for you.
Oh, go.
which describes also this male and female thing. There was this great physicist, a great macho man, which his name is Richard Feynman. Richard Feynman is one of the founders of quantum mechanics and modern physics, quantum electrodynamics. He did everything. When they asked his advisor, Wheeler, what is the best contribution in the physics that you made, he was also, a lot of influence in the physics development. He said Feynman. So Feynman was a brilliant boy, a physics student, a brilliant physics researcher, a brilliant physics professor, a brilliant physics educator, a brilliance on everything. He's very smart, uncompromising, very macho, no emotions, no feelings. And then they discovered, in his autobiography also writes how he was conquering everything. Nature and girls together. He's a character, very, very peculiar character. And his wife was dying. He was when he was 24 or something. He walks into her bedside, right? And he was 25, 24, something like that. It was new for him. It was not an old guy that has seen that in his life. It was very new and very frustrating. And he was working also at the Manhattan Project, building the A-bomb against the Japanese. And so he was very busy. He goes to his deathbed, to her deathbed. And finally, being emotional and holding hands, and she passes away in front of him. He realized that the clock next to her bedpost, her deathbed post, has stopped. Now, the great Feynman says that is impossible by the law of physics. There cannot be a coincidence. Many people will put a very significant, a meaningful significance to that random event or to this coincidence. Not me. I say that the nurse would have come in and the clock was already a very shitty clock and it was not moving very well. So the nurse came in and picked it up to verify the time of death and put it down. Now, the nurses have their own watches here, right? Remember? In the old time, they had their watch here. And then did Professor Feynman verify that was supposed, if it was something that he wanted to mention, he has to verify and say, did you pick up the clock? No, he doesn't verify that. He said, it's impossible that the clock stopped and that the clock has a significant meaning. It's just a coincidence. Someone picked up, and because it was not working well anyway, it stopped. Okay. Now, Many people report that. Many people report that when someone, or close relative, mother, father dies, something happens.
Yeah.
A light goes off, the light goes on, clocks stop, silence, birds are flying and crying, dogs are barking. I mean, all kinds of phenomena
Yeah.
that we just rush. And because of the moment, I mean, with my experience is that there's a deafening silence.
That's a beautiful story, because I know that when my father passed, I had an experience that at the time you don't connect until you get the call. You know, you get the call that he'd sort of passed over, and immediately I went back to, because it passed in the middle of the night, and I'd been dreaming, but it was a very vivid dream that he was there, his face was there in front of me, but he was there in front of me with Prince and Michael Jackson and John Lennon, who'd already passed. And for me, that was, you know, I'd seen these fleeting visions of my dad and these people, but he'd never stayed around. Whereas this time it was very different. He was with them and they'd obviously passed over, and it was like a real definite sign that he passed over now and he was okay. And that for me was a huge moment of knowing of peace, that he felt okay, because that felt okay as I was experiencing it. It felt, I'm at peace. But I didn't obviously make those connections until much later on in the day, after all the trauma of everything that had gone on.
Yeah, so there's another great investigator of this kind of, one of the first to investigate near-death experiences, Peter Fenwick. And along with him, we thought of putting this together as a kind of experiment with these random event generators, that they disturb themselves when something is happening. And try to investigate whether there is some kind of signal when this great transition is passed. But there are many questions for that, because when do we die? Do we die when we lose breath and the breathing stops? Do we die when the brain stops? Do we die when the heart stops? Are we already 90% dead 2 days before the death? 1% alive after? I mean, the body is still growing.
Yeah.
As you say, the dirty things that we are connected with are like nature, growing hair. So the body is still kind of moving. So where are we? Is it brain that are part of the body, or are we going somewhere else? Is there an identity that is not part of the physical state, but more part of the correlations of this physical state, that these correlations can just kind of exist beyond space and time? And as the Indian philosophers would say, we are never born and we never die. It's just a matter of connecting with something and disconnecting. These are all nice questions, and these are all kind of questions that they bring science. I think that they enrich science, because they put the body of solid knowledge that we have about the scientific investigation, and that with something which is of an expanded horizon of learning. We are not just a bunch of
that was so much more. Yeah, I believe that we are. And I think that is that's something that we, in fact, you know, if you're listening to this now or you're watching this back, then put in your thoughts and beliefs as to what you think that transition actually is, because we could talk about all sorts of belief systems and religions and ideologies of beliefs that are out there. But let's hear from you guys. You come and tell us your thoughts, what your beliefs are, and your experiences. What are your experiences of losing somebody, and the coincidences of clocks stopping or any other strange encounters? It's going to be really interesting to have your feedback. Vasileios, it's been an absolute joy to have you here. We're going to be talking again, I know, because there's so much that we haven't covered that I want to delve into. So we're delighted to have you back.
We didn't say what is complexity and correlations.
So you've got to come back to talk about that. But first of all, I must mention that Vasileios and I met at Broughton Hall at Skipton at the Wyrd Experience last year. And for anybody who is wanting to experience the research, we've got the Reg machine there, we've got Murphy there, we've got Frog there. There's lots of things from the Pears Institute that they used for their experiments that are now at the Wyrd Experience in Broughton Hall. So you can actually go there very shortly and experience for yourself how they actually work. It's really good fun. And the orange sofa that everybody sat on as well to do these experiments is there as well. So it's a really beautiful space. There's lots of books there and some Pears research material that you can take away and read as well. So I do encourage everybody to go up to Broughton Hall and experience that. Vasileios, thank you once again. It's been an absolute joy.
My pleasure. Thank you.
We will speak again soon. Take care, everybody. Thank you so much for listening on The Weird World of Knowing. I do hope you enjoyed your time with us. I'm Rachel Nearing, your host. And gosh, I'm having a ball putting all of this together for you, so I hope you are too. And if you are, please do like, subscribe and share with those who might actually benefit from these weird moments of knowing as they realise how many of their own they've been having all their life. Take care and we'll see you next week.